All right, and welcome everyone to our minor source emissions inventory 2020 emissions inventory training. Today is February 4th, 2021. And I have welcome to Teams. We are using Microsoft Teams for this meeting. I am going to ask that everyone keep themselves muted unless they have a specific question. Up at the top right or bottom middle of your screen, you should have a little microphone icon. If you have a slash through the microphone, that means you are currently muted. And as I said, please stay muted unless you are actively speaking to help reduce background noise. If you have any questions during today's presentation, please either raise your hand by clicking that little hand icon just to the left of your microphone icon in either the top right or bottom middle of your screen, or you can type it into the chat window. If you do put a question in the chat, we may answer it in the chat or we may read it aloud to discuss. Let's see, what else are we going over today? As an important announcement, if you do see in AEIR that stack information is information for pieces of equipment at your facility are incorrect, please do contact us. Use that request support button in AEIR. However, incorrect stack information will not prevent you from submitting your emissions inventory, and it may take us some time to make those corrections. So don't be surprised if we don't make those corrections before you have to submit your emissions inventory. Today, we are going to start with Sean giving us a quick tour within AEIR before we move on to Rosalind giving us some more general information and going over some guidance. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sean Leister, who I have muted, Sean, to give us a tour.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Angela. As she said, we're switching around the order of today's training just because I have to leave early for today. So at any time, that doesn't prevent you from asking questions. So if any time you have a question, feel free to speak up or raise your hand or type it in the chat. So today we'll start off with going through an overview of AEIR. There are some things I want to mention really quick here. So when you log in to SEP and create your account, you can register for AEIR. And once we approve you, you will be able to get to this AEIR homepage screen through the login. I'm in the testing version right now, which is denoted by the purple banner up here, but you all will have a blue banner. Everything else should look the same. So there are a few buttons here that I want to point out. There is a Manage ESign button. If you haven't registered for Manage ESign, I would suggest that you have your certifiers do so that way when the submission period comes or when you want to submit your emissions inventory to the Air Quality Bureau, you will have it all set and ready to go to certify those inventories. And also we want to note that be careful if you are identity proofing yourself through this Manage ESign button, because there is only one shot to get all of your credentials correct. So make sure you're entering your correct birth date, your correct address, and your correct name, and so on. Because if there is a mistake in that, it will require paperwork to fix. So if you can get it right the first time, everything will just be a little bit more smooth. And to do so, you just click on this Manage ESign button. The other button that I want to point out is this click here to register for additional facilities and or roles at your existing facilities. If you haven't registered for your facilities in AEIR yet, or you want to become a facility admin, a submitter, or a certifier for any new facilities, please click on this button right here and go to your company and register for the corresponding facilities and the corresponding roles that you would like to have. And we can approve facility admins for those roles, and facility admins can then approve any certifiers and submitters that register for the roles afterwards. So in AEIR, there are a few sections. It's broken up into 4 sections. We have news and information section, which just gives any updates as well as Rosalind and I's contact information. There's the facility admissions reporting section where all of your current registered facilities reside. I'm registered for all facilities in New Mexico. That's why you see so many. So don't be intimidated by my screen. You'll have many fewer facilities on your list. And the third section is to create new facility emissions inventory submission. And right here, you can create any new emission inventories for any specific facility by selecting the facility in this drop-down list, or typing the AI number of the facility or the name of the facility and selecting your reporting year as 2020. And then you can create a new one by clicking on this green button. You can also create inventories using XML by creating an XML using your own tools or via Calcite that we have on our website now. And once the XML is created, you can browse your computer to select the XML and import it to create a new submission. Once these submissions are created, you'll see that you'll have a facility and a radio button underneath with the 2020 submittal in process. You can access those submittals at a later time by clicking on the radio button and clicking on the yellow edit submittal button. You also have options to delete any in-process submittals down here. And once you're ready, you can certify your submittal. And after certification, you can view your certified submittal. And the last section, which we'll go over today as well, is our separate greenhouse gas submittal, emissions inventory submittal, which is separate from your individual facility submittals. And many companies will have to submit both a traditional emissions inventory submittal for their facility, as well as a greenhouse gas submittal for their entire company. So let's get to that in a few minutes. I've already created a submittal today for a new facility, which is AI number 38822. It's a Devon facility, Fighting Okra 18 well pad 7, and it has an NOI. So permit types of NOI as well as GCP 2, 3, 5, and 6 are able to add equipment. And you can see that I can add equipment to these facilities because it has these 3 buttons right here, add, modify, and remove. Also, be sure to check that you are allowed to add equipment before you do. So be sure to check that you have an NOI or a GCP 2, 3, 5, or 6. If you don't have those, these buttons should not appear. We have had a problem where sometimes the buttons do appear, but we're working on fixing that. So always just double check what permit type you have before adding something. And in this facility, I've already added a few pieces of equipment. So it came without any equipment. I've added all of these today. I've added 2 internal combustion engines as well as a crusher. And I gave them designations and descriptions, and I will show you that process right now. So once you've added a new piece of equipment by clicking the add button and filling out information, you can save it, and it'll be presented on this first screen right here as a new line item with a new status and the date of creation. They shouldn't come complete yet. I will show you that process in a couple minutes. So if I click on this radio button for the crusher specifically, and click on modify, this is how you can view the information that you input when creating a new piece of equipment or a new subject item. So there are a few requirements which are marked with this red asterisk sign. And they are the designation, which just stands for what your facility calls that piece of equipment internally. The Air Quality Bureau will give our own designation for each piece of equipment once the emission inventory is submitted, and that's our unit IDs. And it'll be usually of the form EQPT1 or EQPT some number, depending on how many pieces of equipment you have, and also depending on the category. So this is a piece of equipment, a crusher. Categories might also be area sources or area or something else along those lines. And all of the categories and types can be found in our guidance document under Appendix A. And that's mostly helpful for people using XML. if you're manually entering the equipment like I am right now, you can just select from these two drop-down menus to determine your category and type. They have specific relationships in, so make sure if you're using XML to be careful not to cross roads under your category and type, and to use the types that are under that specific category that you're trying to add. The description is just a longer field where you can put a more detailed description of what this piece of equipment is. Just make sure that it's descriptive enough for you to understand what its purpose is and why it's there. And if you have the information of manufacturer, rated capacity, and construction date, feel free to enter them here. And the more data we can collect, the better our inventory will be. Under source classification, these are 4-level codes given by the EPA to each individual piece of equipment. And we have resources in our guidance document under Appendix D where you can find SCCs or source classification codes for any specific piece of equipment. Google is also a very good resource. I typed in the SCC, or I've entered in the SCC under these 4 levels for a crusher. The first would be industrial processes, 3 mineral products would be the second level, which is 5 stone quarrying and processing is the third level, and that's 20. Primary crushing is the last level, and that's 1. And the SCC is created on this last line automatically once you select each individual level. The next section of adding a piece of equipment or modifying a piece of equipment is stack information. Each newly added piece of equipment and all existing equipment as well require a stack. And depending on what type of stack it is, you'll enter in the correct type here. So for a crusher, it's a fugitive stack because the crusher is an area source or a volume source, meaning that there is no specific stack where all the emissions come out at one point. Rather, the emissions from a crusher are spread out across the entire volume of the crusher itself. So I selected fugitive right here. The height above ground defaults to 10 in that case. If you have more accurate information, feel free to change this 10 to any more accurate number. And for a fugitive source, it does not require these other 4 variables. For any other type of stack, like a vertical stack, which is an actual vertical stack where all the emissions come out of one point, these other variables are required. But I'll leave it as a fugitive right now because that's the correct one for a crusher. I'll save this modification and you'll see that it is still there. And I also completed the details and emissions of all of these 3 types, or of all of these 3 lines of equipment. And you can see that they're completed because of the check mark. And I'll go over that right now for both the details and emissions for the crusher. So I select the radio button for crusher and click on details. I'll be brought to the details form where the first question is, was the equipment active at any time during the year? And this is a yes or no question. This question is mainly for any existing pieces of equipment that reside at any facility. And if those, sometimes those were not active at any point during the year, or if you just have a piece of equipment that didn't operate at all, or the facility wasn't built, you can select no right here. Everything will be defaulted to 0, and you can submit that item that way. But for most newly added equipment, I assume you're going to say yes, or that the equipment was active during the year. And materials processed is all the general parameters that are required for the crusher. So you have a drop-down list that you can select here. I just selected cements, and I selected that as an input. The next section, it deals with operating time and % of operation during each season. So this is where you can enter the data you've collected throughout 2020 to denote the operating time in hours per year, as well as weeks per year and days and hours per day. The most important one of these 4 is hours per year. So make sure this is the most accurate. So sometimes you have a piece of equipment that does not operate at a constant time. So like you can't just say it's 5 days a week, 35 hours during the week. So when you're calculating this out, just make sure that this hours per year is the exact amount you've kept track of, and the rest of them you can average out, unless you did have a consistent time of operation, in which case it would be easy to just put that information in here. And then percent operation during each season. This is useful information for the EPA, so we've included it here. And so just make sure you calculate this out from the data you've collected in 2020. Right here, this is a dummy piece of equipment. So this is just an example, but I just said that it operated about 1/3 in each season, except for the winter. I put 0%. You can also add comments under subject item comments for this specific piece of equipment. So this is comments for the crusher itself. So I'll save that and be brought to the next screen, which are the emissions. And under here, usually for all new pieces of equipment, you'll have all of the criteria, pollutants, as well as VOCs in here. I've gone ahead and removed all of those other pollutants other than particulate matter, just for ease of time, and also because crushers mainly emit particulate matter. And I entered the amounts right here in tons per year. And so make sure when you're downloading an XML and submitting that, you put your unit of measure for each pollutant as tons per year. I think as of right now, newly downloaded XMLs don't have the unit of measure in place. So just be sure to put tons per year there. And your calculation method, each pollutant requires a calculation method. I put AP42 here, or EPA emission factors, such as AP42, because that is most likely the ones you will use. But we do have a complete list here, and Rosalind will go over our preferences in the guidance document of what we think are the best calculation methods to use if you can use those methods. I will note here that you can also add pollutants, and as I said before, you can remove pollutants. We will be adding particulate matter condensables, which is available in this testing environment right now. I don't believe it's available in production yet, but it will be available soon. So if I go to add pollutants and I type in particulate matter, there is a condensable version right here. And I can click on that. I can also click on other pollutants if I wish to add those to my inventory as well, and add pollutants. And it'll show up on the list. So these are for combustion equipment. And if you have this information, submit it to us and we'll take care of it. EPA is suggesting everybody to put in condensables going forward. So I'll just, if you have condensables, put it in here and select your method of calculations and save it. And once you have the details and emissions of all of the equipment you have at your facility, you'll see a check mark in the complete column. And once you have a check mark for each complete piece of equipment, this review for submittal, this yellow review for submittal button will appear, and you can review your emissions inventory for submittal. And after the review, you can certify your emissions inventory. There are a couple other things on this page that I want to go over. There are the submittal comments, where you can enter in comments for the entire facility. So the other comments that we went over before were just comments for individual pieces of equipment. But if you want us to know a specific thing about the entire facility, such as it did not run during 2020, or it was constructed in June of 2020, and that's why your hours of operation are low, you can put them in here and we can see those. So, or if you have, there's something in the calculations you want us to keep mind of, you can put that information here as well. And under that section are the file attachments, which is where you can attach your calculations to the submittal. Just browse your computer for your calculations and enter a file description and upload the file. And then after that, you can review for submittal. And after the review, you can certify the submittal. And so yeah, just as a reminder again, please do the manage ESign. now sooner rather than later. So that way, when it comes time to certify the submittal, you're not running into any issues where you can't get identity proved and it becomes stressful. So if you have any problems with managing your ESign, feel free to contact us and we can help you out. And right now I'm going to return to the home page to go over greenhouse gases. Are there any questions about anything so far, or just emissions inventory in general?
Everyone, if you have questions, go ahead and raise your hand or type them in the chat box. But as of right now, Sean, I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, okay. Deanna, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. So I have a question about the attachments, because we're going to be having a few attachments. One will be the calculations, and then I know that we also need to attach our like test analyses or gas analyses. So we will have hundreds of those from the lab, but if we have taken that lab information and like parsed it into an Excel spreadsheet, can we just attach that Excel spreadsheet, or do y'all need to see the actual documents from the laboratory? Because we've got 250 facilities.
I believe that will definitely accept all of that information in one file, in one spreadsheet, but that's correct, right, Rosalind?
Yes, we understand this is a huge project, and many, some companies have hundreds of facilities, so uploading each one, that would be nice if you did, but if you cannot and you put it all in one spreadsheet, that would be fine too.
Okay, so you would take it in an Excel spreadsheet, not necessarily the 15-page lab report for each one. We can have an Excel file with all the information in it for all of the facilities. Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions, so you can keep going, I guess.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and if at any point anybody has questions, feel free to speak up. I'm still loading the homepage here, so it might take a couple more minutes or a few more seconds. You shouldn't have this loading problem in the production environment. It's just that I have so many facilities in here that it takes a while for me to load. And as you can see, the homepage is being pulled up right now. And we did go over the certification process last week. And the video, I believe, has been uploaded to our webpage. So you can go ahead and view that to get a gist of the certification process if you're at that point. And if not, you can view it at a later time if you need help with the certification process in general.
Sean, I believe that's not quite on our website yet. It will be in the very near future.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the correction. Yeah, so just keep an eye out for that. And
That's
at the bottom of the page,
comment. I'm sorry. Sean, Sufi had a comment about the gas analysis, gas and oil analysis. Sufi, could you unmute yourself and state your thoughts?
Hi guys, this is Sufi. I was suggesting that you save the lab test results, not send it to us, but save them just in case we ever need to follow up with you, that you have those results available with you. That's all.
yeah, that is actually really good. So once we go through the quality assurance process of the emissions inventory, we may be contacting specific facilities if we find any discrepancies or anything that is not logical to us. And also, if we do need those specific gas analyses, we will email you about those. So please just keep those on file in case we do email you, and we can work together to get everything all sorted out. Okay, so the last section on the homepage is our greenhouse gas submittal. We decided to separate our greenhouse gas submittal from the facility submittals themselves because we wanted to make it as congruent with what EPA requires to make it easier on companies to submit their greenhouse gases. So EPA requires greenhouse gas submittals per company rather than per facility. So that's what we have on the separate greenhouse gas submittal. You are required to submit a greenhouse gas submittal to the Air Quality Bureau if you are required to submit it to the EPA. And I believe the cutoff point or the threshold on that is 25,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalents per year. So if you emit that much or more, you need to submit a greenhouse gas submittal to us. If you emit less than that, you are not required to submit the greenhouse gas submittal to us, but we will definitely appreciate if you do, just because we want to collect as much greenhouse gas information as possible moving forward. And to do a greenhouse gas submittal, you can click on this drop-down menu and all of your companies will pop up. So most of you will likely have one company. Some of you might have up to 3, possibly 5. We imagine that there won't be that many of you that have that many. So if I click on a company in here, it'll show up right here in the reporting year. Will be 2020 once my webpage loads. So I can select 2020, create a new greenhouse gas submittal. And these work the same as facility submittals, where after you've created one, you can click on the radio button next to the greenhouse gas submittal and edit the submittal as well as certify them for later use. Review and certify. So greenhouse gas submittals, to be, again, congruent with the EPA, are submitted by subpart, by EPA subparts. So when greenhouse gases are submitted to the EPA, they have different subparts to denote different rules for different types of sources of greenhouse gases. So common sources of greenhouse, or common subparts that may be used, would be subpart C for general stationary fuel combustion sources, and subpart W is also a very common one at the bottom of this list here for petroleum and natural gas systems, as well as a few other of these. So whatever you submit to the EPA, please submit that to us as well, with the note that we only want New Mexico emissions. So if you have a basin that traverses across state lines, please just cut off the basin in New Mexico so that we have all New Mexico emissions only. So I will add a subpart right here, and we only require 3 greenhouse gases to be submitted: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. You can input the amounts emitted in metric tons per year for each of these. If you don't emit one, you can leave it at 0. But I will just put a number here. You can also add additional subparts by clicking on the blue Add a New Subpart button, and it'll let you add a different subpart. So I can just put this here as well, and for subpart W, and I can write down or enter in the greenhouse gases emitted for each individual subpart. You can add your comments here and attach your calculations as well. And once you are done with that, you can save it. And you can also submit it for certification if you're at that point already. And that kind of wraps up with what I wanted to go over with AEIR itself. Does anybody have any questions for today?
Let's see. We do have a suggestion that you could include a PDF image of the lab analysis in the calculation workbook. That sounds like a great option to me. And other than that, I'm not seeing any other questions as of right now.
Great, thank you, Angela. And that is a really good suggestion. So if you have the means available to do that, we would appreciate that. If you want to submit it under one document. Perfect. So feel free to tune in next week for another training, and I'll turn it on, or I'll give it to Roslyn to take over the rest of this training.
Okay, thanks, Sean. we're going to swap screens. I'm going to take over. And let's make sure I end up where we need to be. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Rosalind, we can see your, or at least I can see your screen.
I can as well.
Okay, great. Okay, good, because I can't see the chat box. So we didn't go over how to navigate here because we've done that in all the other many training sessions. So you can definitely turn on any training session and it will give you this link, including this one, once we get it online. So this is the emissions inventory submittal page. And right here, this picture here for AEIR, you can click on access. When you do that, make sure that you are in Foxfire or Google Chrome and not Internet Explorer, because Internet Explorer does not work well with any of these programs that we have. So here's some information. The deadline is midnight on April 1st. We're collecting greenhouse gases. I'm going to go over the document, the guidance document a little bit, just some points I want to highlight. Here's the instructions to access AEIR. I noticed that we have some new people in the audience today. That's good. Thank you for coming. And thank you to the other people who have been coming consistently. Really appreciate that. And here's how to access AEIR. If you have not accessed AEIR yet, there's written instructions and there is a video starring Sean and I. It's a YouTube video, so be sure, if you get into that, be sure to like us and subscribe. This is the first thing I would suggest you do. You need to access AEIR, and it gives you the links on how to do it. And people are still doing that. We've had to, we're getting a lot of requests for that right now. So I recommend that you do it now. Since the due date is April 1st, that really gives us less than 2 months, a little bit less than, well, about 2 months. And the faster or the sooner you get in your submittals, the easier it's going to be than waiting until the last minute. So for the month of January, we've only had 3 certifications, and we're hoping that number goes up quickly. And we'll go over the certification process. Here's where to find the guidance document. And creating a new submittal. Sean went over that briefly, but here's a short video on how to do it. Manually adding a piece of equipment to an NOI. It works the same way in GCPs, 2, 3, 5s, and 6s. Most GCP 4s have been converted to GCP oil and gas, which if you have to add equipment or have equipment removed, you need to go through permitting for that. XML AEIR training, I would recommend this training session on December 26th. And then here we have a section on how to certify your completed inventory if you're already submitted it and it needs to be certified. The process has changed. We're not using ESAA forms anymore, only under rare circumstances that you have not qualified. The certifier has not been approved through Manage ESign, and I'll go over that too. So there's instructions here to certify. I recommend you follow that. The Manage ESign will go over that. Here's our training sessions, and we are waiting to upload our videos. Meanwhile, this one is here, and these are the ones from 2021. That's a very good video to look at if you haven't seen any yet. This training session for December 16th, I highly recommend. And this is the rest of our training. So we have 3 more trainings, February 11th, 18th, and 25th, all on Thursdays at 2 p.m. You can join our meetings by simply clicking here. There is some other resources, other past videos and trainings that may be helpful. Information on source classification codes, SCC, the NAICS codes. Okay, so let's go back up, and I want to talk about this, how to access AEIR. This document contains some information on which permit types you can add equipment to and which ones you cannot. Also, it talks about the ESAA form is no longer required. The AEIR user roles. Right now we have 3, the facility administrator, the certifier, the preparer/submitter. The facility administrator can disapprove or approve preparers and submitters and certifiers. Preparers, submitters are normally a consultant, but it doesn't have to be. If you're a small company, all you really need is a facility administrator and a certifier. Now, if you are a certifier, we prefer it, well, it's necessary that the certifier is the owner, the operator, the responsible official, or company official of the company. So this is really important. And as you go through Manage ESign, only certifiers will need to do this. If you do not pass, if your identity is not verified, then you will need to fill out an ESAA form. And we're hoping to avoid doing that. So it's really specific. Unfortunately, there's only one chance at doing this, and we'll go over the details of that. So listen closely. We'll talk about that right now. So we're going to go down to the certification process. Okay, this is Manage ESign. This is the part you can do it long before you need to certify any of your submittals. You can do it right now. You can do it today. And I highly recommend that you do it as soon as possible. And it's uploading. Okay. Okay, so the Manage ESign, certifiers only. For new certifiers, it's really important. It will verify your identity. You set up an ESign password, and there's 5 questions that they ask, like, what's your first pet's name? What's your favorite movie? You know, simple questions like that. For existing certifiers, those of you who have already submitted your ESA forms and have filed in that, you will need to go through this process also, but you're just really setting up your password and the challenge questions because your identity has already been proofed and are verified, and so you've already been moved into the right location. You've already been grandfathered in. So when you open up AEIR, click under Manage ESign, and that's where you will begin the process. And it will ask these questions: what's going to be your SEP username, and what is the action? The drop down is new user registration. Again, use Chrome, Foxfire, Safari, or Microsoft Edge. I never heard of that, nor have I used it. Internet Explorer will not work. Don't use Internet Explorer. And here's some information off on the right. So that's what you're selecting on new user registration. You're going to submit. And then this page will come up. It's the electronic subscriber agreement. These bulleted points are all points that you are agreeing to. And you click here to register. Okay, and fill out this form. And so you're putting in your name, your last name, your date of birth. We've had one failure because somebody put in their husband's birth date. So unfortunately, they had to go back and use an ESAA form. Use your home address, the one listed on your credit report. Because this process goes through LexisNexis, your phone number can be your one at work and your email can be the one at work, but your home address needs to be listed here. Okay, so select password and challenge questions. So you put in your password and you confirm your password. And then it has a drop down here with several questions, and you can you go through this process 5 times and then you submit it. You get only one chance to pass the identity verification. Those of you who are brand new, those of you who are grandfathered in, you'll pass. You've already passed. You just need to pretty much register. So when you certify, you will use that password. It will ask you for that password, and then it will also ask one of the 5 questions, an answer to one of the 5 questions you'll need to enter. Again, use your personal address, and phone number, not your business phone number, sorry. Take your time and use the help menu because we want to make sure, right now we have 90%. So it's working really, really well, and we want to continue that. And then this is the email that you will receive once you have been approved. And here's the language. If you weren't verified, unfortunately, you were not. We were not able to verify your identity based on the information. So then you need to contact one of us. Lindsay Hurst and Nicholas Cohen work in AQBCR. It's me and Sean and I, that are working in AEIR. So that is how that works. And I urge you all to do that as quickly as possible to make sure that you are registered and your identity has been verified and you're ready to certify. So get your certifiers in there, please. Okay, so the guidance document, let's go over a couple of pieces of information here. This is turning out to be the official emissions guidance document. The latest version is December 30th, 2020. Sean and I will be making some more edits, but nothing absolutely critical. Just some errors that we found in here and some things that we want to add. Table of contents are all hyperlinks. We talk about excess emissions, malfunctions, fugitives, stack information, the best calculations. We talk about portables, closed facilities, reporting inactive facilities. We have a great appendix here for Appendix A is really important for those of you using XML. There is some training in here for XML if you are interested in doing that, and also greenhouse gas instructions. So this is a very important document for you to refer to. So let's talk about this for a moment, the actual emissions versus permitted versus potential emission rates and potential to emit. Now it's very important that you understand actual emissions are not your permitted emissions. If you submit your permitted emissions off your permit, that's going to be an instant reject. We will reject your submittal and you will have to go back and submit your actual emissions. Potential emission rates, that will be rejected also. Do not use that in any of your calculations because you will be using only certain calculation methods. Potential to emit is not allowed either. So
we have our
yes,
question about certification. So the question is an RO required to certify the EIs for non-Title V / minor sites? Or can another company representative certify the minor facility EIs?
I'm sorry, I missed the very beginning of it. Could you repeat that?
Sure. Is an RO required to certify EIs for non-Title V minor sites?
You can use an RO or a company official. So I know for Title V's and other permitting actions, you need an RO. But for emissions inventory, the regulation states a company official. So that could be an RO, or it could be whoever you feel is a company official within your company. Is that clear?
Thank you, Rosalind.
Thank you. Okay, so let's look at excess emissions, malfunctions, SSMs. So I want to talk about excess emissions and NOIs. Although excess emissions are not required to be reported by NOIs to AQB-CR or AQB, the Air Quality Bureau, they are required for emissions inventory. So any excess emissions, blowdowns, malfunctions, SSMs must be reported for NOIs and GCPs, all Title V's, oil and gas, GCPs, NSRs, all of the permits. All of this is required that you report it. And the other key point I want to make here that these emissions should be reported from the piece of equipment from which it was released. Now, I know some Title V's normally have a malfunction bucket and they have a SSM bucket. If you can, for NOIs and GCPs and all permit types, follow these directions for emissions inventory to submit that value on to the piece of equipment from which it was emitted. Here is some information about fugitives. I'll let you go over the two different types. This is very important for you to refer to. Stack information, the most important thing is that when you're creating a new piece of equipment, that you need to add a stack. And as Sean showed, that even if it's a volume or an area fugitive, a fugitive stack is required, and that defaults to 10. And the other parameters like stack height and temperature are not required. So we consider fugitive as a stack too. Okay. The Calcatenate, the calculation tool that has been developed, there is training on that. And if you use this, the default is AP42 for emission factors, but you can enter other emission factors, and then you can use this easily to upload and automatically populate your data in AEIR. And there is a training on that. I believe the December 16th training was very good. Methods of calculating actual emissions. We have listed the preferred methods. So actual compliance stack test is the most preferred tier 1. SEMS compliance test. Tier 2, process simulators like HISIS, Aspen, Promax. Those are fine. Tier 3, then we're looking at AP42. In Tier 4, I understand that TANKS 4.09 is not acceptable. It's not really a very good tool, but unfortunately, it's one that we haven't found a really good replacement for. So if you can use instead EPA, AP42, that would probably be better for tank. So if you can avoid using anything in Tier 4, that would be great. Okay, some more information, the requirements for the calculation spreadsheets. As people have asked, we have 250 NOIs. Can we just do the calculations on one page? Yes, you can, and say this is the way we've calculated engines, tanks, and other pieces of equipment, flares, using these calculation methods. And that would be absolutely acceptable. Portables, there's a blurb here on portables. It's, I know there's some portables, I just spoke to somebody today, where the SI, excuse me, one SI, one piece of equipment actually is 250 units. So that's 250 engines, which some of those engines ran and some of them did not. This is the leasing company. So we were trying to figure out the best way to submit that information. And we did. So if you have a portable and you're not sure how to enter information in AEIR for an SI that has a subject item that has 250 units or 97 units, we see really huge numbers, then contact us, because we have figured out a way that would work for AEIR. So here is some information about reporting inactive facilities. I'll let you read over this, but the most important thing, that if your equipment, if your facility ran at all in 2020, then you need to submit emissions. So if it ran for a week or for a day, submit those emissions. And the other one is that you may have had an active permit for 2020, but you didn't close it out till the end of the year. But that means it was active for the beginning part of the year. So you do need to submit an emissions inventory, even though you select the equipment was not used. As Sean had shown in the overview earlier, you can select that. So you are required to submit a emissions inventory for 2020, because that permit was active for the year 2020, and that includes NOIs and GCPs. And as you move further down through this, you can see there's a lot of snapshots of what to do, what it's going to look like. If you have any updates to your permit, and that would be to any one of your permits or registrations that you feel is needs permitting attention, then you need to contact permitting. We're not going to be able to do it ourselves. We're not permitting, we're emissions inventory. Changes in NAICS code, there's some information here. There were changes, so make sure that those have been submitted. Okay, so that's the part of the document that I wanted to show you. And I think that's about it. Are there any questions?
We don't have any questions right now. But if you do have questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box or raise your hand.
So please review the videos and come with your questions. We'll probably go over certification and urge you all to sign in to manage ESign. And all the information you want is on this web page. So be sure to navigate to this. It's the emissions inventory submittal. If you have any problems, then contact us. And I think if there's no more questions, I think we can wrap it up.
I'm still not seeing any questions. That must mean that everyone knows exactly what they're doing. As always, if you have any questions or problems, or you're seeing something you don't understand in your emissions inventory or the AEIR program, we encourage you to first look at the guidance documents and videos that we've created. And if you still don't understand, please contact us. We are here to help.